Many people converse using their cell phones and electronic gadgets, often pointing blame at those they're speaking with while disregarding their surroundings. An elderly gentleman chalks a complex mathematical equation on the pavement of a hospital parking area. Just as he finishes, his attention shifts to a young woman, Tsukiko Sagi, who stands inside a bus. Tsukiko notices the man's gaze, but the bus moves and exposes graffiti reading, "Enter Lil Slugger." At MNF Incorporated, a company specializing in mascot character design, Tsukiko Sagi tries creating a fresh character without success. Her boss, Hadamura, nudges her to build on her prior hit, Maromi, an adorable pink dog character. Later, during her solitary nighttime walk home, Tsukiko confides her struggles to her stuffed animal, Maromi. A homeless lady startles Tsukiko, she walks away, yet when she looks back, the lady vanishes. Fearful, Tsukiko runs, stumbles in a parking lot, and scatters her belongings. As she gathers her things, she reaches for a design that slipped under a car, injuring her arm. Tearfully, she turns and gets attacked. Back at MNF, Hadamura fields calls, concerned for Tsukiko. News reports identify Tsukiko as an assault victim. Detectives Keiichi Ikari and Mitsuhiro Maniwa question her in her hospital room. Ikari is stern, but Maniwa is gentle, coaxing out details. Tsukiko sketches her attacker, a middle school boy with a red hat and a bent golden bat. In the hospital lobby, the old man from before argues with tabloid reporter Akio Kawazu, who hit him with his car. The man's son confronts Kawazu about hospital bills. Kawazu learns from a passing nurse that the detectives were in room 510, so he seeks information about the case. In their car, Ikari and Maniwa talk about the situation. Ikari questions the veracity of the case, while Maniwa thinks Tsukiko might be strange. They make a dinner bet. The old man's equation concludes with the number 510. Kawazu searches for info on Tsukiko, checks her workplace, and discovers the suspect description released to the media, Lil Slugger. Speaking with residents, Ikari and Maniwa come across an otaku who describes a short homeless woman. They find her tent but meet Kawazu instead. Kawazu walks away with a paper. In her apartment, Tsukiko gazes at a notice board covered with kind words and sympathy directed towards her. But before long, the messages take a negative turn, accusing her of not telling the truth. Tsukiko's breath quickens, and she starts to appear extremely anxious. Right at that moment, something unthinkable happens. Maromi, her companion, appears to awaken and consoles Tsukiko. Surprisingly, Tsukiko reacts to this as if it's a normal event in her life. Kawazu meets Tsukiko, discussed her assault, and showed her a stolen drawing. She agrees to an interview. While talking, Tsukiko recalls the assailant's golden inline skates. Later, Kawazu visits Tsukiko's apartment, gets a call, sees Tsukiko, hangs up and is attacked by Lil Slugger. Lil Slugger greets Tsukiko and departs. At the police station, Ikari and Maniwa read newspapers. Maniwa anticipates Korean barbecue, as he won their earlier bet. A young boy named Yuichi Taira, who was known as Ichi due to being considered the best in everything, zoomed around on his shiny golden inline skates. He impressed some girls with a confident smile as he passed them. However, things took a turn when he started getting ignored by his peers at school. Confused by this sudden change, he eventually figured out that he was being mistaken for a mysterious figure called Lil Slugger, who had been causing trouble. Ichi believed a fellow student named Shogo Ashiyama, nicknamed Ashi, was spreading the rumors to gain an advantage in the student council elections. Despite his anger, Ichi didn't take immediate action without proof. His frustration grew, and he became increasingly paranoid about Ashi. Amidst this, detectives Ikari and Maniwa investigated an assault and talked to Tsukiko, who might have had some information. Back at school, Ichi's situation worsened as he was alienated by his classmates. He received a troubling image on his phone, which caused more chaos when the same image was sent to everyone else, making Ichi look like the aggressor. During all this, Ichi sought solace from his tutor, Harumi Kano, and he confronted Ashi about the rumors. Ichi's anxiety intensified as he saw Ashi as the source of his troubles. Ikari and Maniwa continued their investigations and gathered information about Lil Slugger from the neighborhood. A sequence of conversations among neighbors highlighted the connection between Ichi and Lil Slugger. Meanwhile, Ichi got questioned by the detectives but was cleared as a suspect. He hoped the police's involvement would end the bullying, but his birthday party turned out to be a disappointment. Frustrated, Ichi gave up his beloved inline skates. Ashi approached Ichi and extended his sympathy, triggering mixed emotions in him. Ichi's anger grew, and he envisioned a scenario where he defeated Lil Slugger. As he chased after this figure, reality blurred, and Lil Slugger vanished. Tsukiko reflected on Lil Slugger and got interrupted by her mascot, Maromi, suggesting she forget the past. Meanwhile, Ashi remained unconscious in the hospital, and the old man wrote an equation on the pavement. In his room, Ichi watched old tapes and experienced a distorted reality. He was tormented by visions of his classmates accusing him and associating him with Lil Slugger. The situation escalated, leading to a climactic encounter where Ichi got struck by a bat. Everything went black, while voices kept yelling out Ichi's name. In the meantime, there's a woman named Maria who just finished her session with a fan of animes who's a bit on the heavy side. This guy, even when he's all caught up in desires, can't help but keep his mind in the world of anime, creating a storyline in his head, you know what I mean. After Maria gets back home, she transforms into a librarian. It's interesting to discover her other identity. She takes off her wig and surprisingly reveals herself as Ichi's tutor, Harumi. Later on, we meet the man Harumi is dating and supposedly planning to marry. Well, they're an odd couple. Their interactions at work are strictly business, lacking any emotional connection. When the boyfriend proposes marriage, it's as casual and ordinary as any regular conversation. Naturally, Harumi isn't happy with Maria's behavior. For a while, it seemed like she might quit her nighttime activities, and they were coexisting relatively peacefully. You see Harumi, somewhat hopeful, washing off Maria's makeup in the shower, possibly looking forward to the future. However, she then decides to get rid of Maria's clothes, but someone isn't ready to disappear. Suddenly, her alter ego Maria is back in full force, without a care for anyone's wedding plans. She reacts defensively. Yet, Harumi can't bring herself to share the unusual situation in her mind with her partner. Screeching crows have a significant presence, haunting Harumi from a deserted place to a boat with her partner. Crows are often seen as scavengers, symbols of impurity and impending disaster. They embody everything that Maria represents. In simpler terms, they symbolize what Harumi wants to distance herself from. Continuing, as both women fight for what they want, an absurd battle takes place between them. This is where the symbolic imagery takes center stage. Harumi desperately tries to remove Maria from her life by deleting her voicemails, which are essential and validating to Maria, and even attempts to tear up a portrait of her. Maria isn't pleased with Harumi's indifference and gains such a strong hold after being ignored for days, combined with the daily stress on poor Harumi, that she appears to Kano in full force, engaging in a physical fight to establish dominance in the mind. But before things get even stranger, Lil Slugger intervenes, sending them both to the hospital as victims of an attack. Just before this, we see them briefly in distorted clown-like makeup, symbolizing their lack of genuine identity. For Harumi, the struggle for inner harmony will have to wait for another day. She doesn't need to stop believing in herself. Meanwhile, it appears that the media has caught someone who seems to be a real suspect this time. For Tsukiko, Maromi still serves as a source of self-affirmation, and the sky remains its usual blue. Masami Harukawa is an older police officer who hasn't had a new assignment in a while. However, he's still trying to support his family well. He's working on building a new house, and he frequently gazes at it. While discussing the Lil Slugger case with Keiichi, they shift the conversation to a peculiar episode of sneezing caused by an allergy. This might suggest a hidden stress that is making him physically unwell. Interestingly, this allergic reaction could be a sign of a weakened immune system due to external pressure. It's not very surprising then, when it's revealed that he lives a double life. He secretly interacts with shady criminals and is involved with the underground world, including illegal prostitution rings. But the question arises, why would he do this? He cares for his family, so why risk their safety? Well, it's because he's a man who's struggling. He feels he can't properly provide for his family through honest means. His role as a cop seems stagnant. So, as he faces financial difficulties, he enters a self-affirming state of mind, illustrated by reading tough-fighting comics where he imagines himself as a righteous fighter battling his inner demons for the sake of his family. His mental condition becomes increasingly troubled when the world of crime starts demanding more cash from him. This delusional state of affirmation manifests in different facets of his life, even in private settings when he wants to be called daddy. In order to pay off his debts, he finally turns to thievery and other illegal activity while donning a pink mask. It's easy to speculate about who might be wearing that mask. In a nightmarish scenario, he approaches Harumi in an alley. In a strange moment of clarity, he turns her around and sees her face, which seems to unsettle him. This hits too close to home, doesn't it, Hirokawa? The criminal group continues their exploitative actions, pushing him to earn more money through even darker means, like using drugs. During a particular robbery, his thought process, depicted by the comics he reads, is blended with real-world events. The editing here is quick, showing the complexity of his inner conflict. He envisions himself as a hero protecting the innocent during the robbery, yet later, he's gently questioned by someone about who he really is. This leads him to ask his victims the same question. Despite his struggles, he maintains a facade of success. He finds himself alone in a park and is spotted by Keiichi, leading to them both going to a bar and having a few drinks. They discuss the case and the new generation. This talk is significant because it foreshadows future events. Drunk and wandering the streets, Hirokawa, like other characters in the show, cries out for help from the difficult situation he's put himself in. Fortunately, Lil Slugger arrives to save the day. Even better, Hirokawa manages to apprehend Lil Slugger. This not only elevates his standing in his profession but also gets the criminal group off his back temporarily due to the unwanted attention from the media surrounding all the chaos. So, it finally happened. Our two detectives had managed to capture Little Slugger, and they had him under control in the interrogation room. It was noticeable that the entire atmosphere had changed to something simpler and distant. Faces looked stretched and unclear, and backgrounds held a dreamy watercolor touch. Meet Makoto Kozuka, who was introduced in a hilarious way. He was passionately talking about his role as a holy warrior, accompanied by a blaring trumpet each time he said the phrase. But what was even funnier was watching the experienced detective's patience wear thin as the minutes ticked by in the office. His moments of realization turned into frustration. From there on, the story took us on a journey through this kid's imaginative fantasy world to help solve the mystery of Lil Slugger. You could tell when someone was infected because they had a brilliant red aura surrounding them, and he imagined himself as a holy warrior with a straightforward mission: destroy Goma, a contagious evil power that overcame the local villagers. Of course, this was all relevant to the ongoing case. Kozuka's ramblings were surprisingly helpful for Maniwa, who was closely following the kid's actions. Maniwa even took on the role of a wandering minstrel in the kid's world, acting as an observer and recorder of the strange happenings. Though Ikari, another detective, quickly connected the dots between the kid's world and reality, he remained firmly grounded. Goma, the evil entity, needed to be confronted on its own terms. The specific visuals created in the kid's mind weren't crucial, but it was interesting to see how they symbolized characters. For instance, Ichi was represented as a walking fish, embodying a desperate creature out of its element, defensively attacking everything. The use of puns related to the characters' names helped in decoding the chaos. Like Cho meaning butterfly, representing Harumi's contrasting yet balanced personality. But before delving deeper, let's understand what the kid aimed for. He was pretending to be a levitating warrior on a holy mission to uncover the answer to a perplexing social phenomenon. This might have indicated an attempt to transcend personal reality and connect with something that defied logic. Ikari attempted to understand the kid's motivations by talking to the affected people, but no luck. This matter needed to be resolved on the kid's terms, and Maniwa knew it. Just before the kid recalled Harumi's story, portrayed as a tainted princess, Maniwa became a sort of assistant in this recollection. As more pieces came together, it made sense. When the battle was won and things settled down, events started making sense to Detective Ikari. Yet, he felt anchored by something: his pack of cigarettes. Suddenly, he gave a speech about existing in the present world by embracing what was just and right. Before that sentiment could fully settle, our brave knight, watch him go, and got captured by Hirokawa. But before everyone resurfaced, Kozuka provided a crucial clue about who might truly understand the nature of this mysterious threat after all. Our detectives later spoke with an elderly woman who is thought to have a strong connection to the case. Unfortunately, they didn't make much progress whether they used stern or gentle questioning. Instead, she talked about missing her granddaughter due to economic issues that had split their family. Her daughter had been sent to live with her aunts for a more stable life, while her parents struggled to make a living on their own. She got emotional seeing Ikari's cigarettes, which symbolized how nostalgia was used as a way to cope with emotions. This is highlighted in the show's theme of rising sun, which adds to her emotional response. The focus then shifts to a young girl wandering the streets. Seeing Ichi and Ushiyama triggers a memory from her childhood. She's portrayed as a happy child who sees her parents as the center of her world. The scene is brighter, reflecting her positive outlook on the past. The girl is named Teiko, and she is particularly attached to her father, who is her source of security. Things seem good for her, but the present-day storm hints that something is amiss. The father's identity is kept ambiguous for most of the episode, but considering the context from previous episodes, it's likely Hirokawa. Back to the investigation, the focus shifts from the past to the current case. It's revealed that the elderly woman, like Teiko, no longer has a home. Also, it turns out Tsukiko was alone on the night in question. Returning to the young girl, we see her trying to get a toy from a vending machine, hinting at her innocence. This takes us back to another childhood memory involving a claw machine, showing a parallel between the older woman and the child. Both desire to escape by revisiting the past. The girl overhears her family discussing a move, but being a child, she sees her family as perfect and emotionally fulfilling, particularly her father. Back in the present, it's clear these reflections bring a lot of pain. As her anger rises, the wind and water start sweeping away objects, including her grandmother's tent. Conveniently, this happens just when the detectives receive important information that probably involves Tsukiko making up her story. Notably, both the grandmother and Teiko are reflecting on similar themes simultaneously. This leads to a return to the police station. But first, we get more glimpses of Teiko's past. The purpose might be to contrast the two girls' views of the past, Tsukiko running away from it, and Teiko holding on to it. In one reflection, on her father's birthday, we discover that Masami set up bedroom cameras to afford a new home, causing Teiko to feel abandoned. This man who had been her emotional support shattered her trust and love. This mirrors the old woman's experience. Near the end, a poignant scene shows Hirokawa on the phone in the rain, crying for his daughter. Their home and his dreams are crumbling due to the flood, revealing his self-loathing. But before everything is swept away, we learn what happened to the grandmother after her tent blew over. It's as if the detectives thought she was safely trapped there. As the storm clears, the town and Teiko's memory are wiped clean. She experiences retrograde amnesia. Interestingly, the grandmother regains consciousness in the hospital with her memories intact, suggesting that her sense of self wasn't shaken by the incident. This emphasizes how a child's self-discovery is closely tied to their surroundings. With Tsukiko in a coma and the lives of the victims after the attacks becoming more distant. The latest victim now dealing with mental impairment, while Ushiyama appears quite unique in many ways. The ways and patterns of Lil Slugger are becoming harder to understand as time passes. This creates a challenge for Maniwa, who is deeply involved in this situation. He appears to be quite different now. At the beginning of the episode, he's seen sitting in a chair, meditating while listening to various radio frequencies. It's like he's trying to visualize his thoughts and make sense of the conflicting information that keeps growing more puzzling. While Maniwa is immersed in complex thoughts, Ikari remains more practical, keeping some distance from the case and focusing on what he can comprehend. He firmly believes there's one perpetrator. Here's where things get interesting for Maniwa as we get a glimpse into his thought process. Both of them return to questioning Kozuka about the victims, hoping to break down his defenses and get new information. However, Kozuka sticks to his story, seeking validation from Maniwa, but nobody is buying it. After setting aside hurt feelings, they discover that Kozuka has a distorted sense of identity, which he filled in by attributing positive traits to Lil Slugger. He had attacked only 2 people. This also marks a change in how the 2 detectives will approach the case, each reflecting their characteristic styles. This transformation is triggered by an enlightening experience that takes Maniwa to an imaginary realm created by Lil Slugger, and an old mentor figure explains matters using a magic show. This pushes Maniwa towards a different path, where he starts using abstract concepts to uncover the truth instead of obscuring it. Maniwa's unconventional investigation leads him to question Hirokawa, who is struggling with his sanity and haunted by his daughter's image during brief moments of clarity. These revelations help Maniwa realize that Lil Slugger is an entity that needs to be called upon. Recognizing this, he and Ikari rush back to the police station to meet Kozuka, only to find. With this unfortunate event adding to their list of failures, the detectives are essentially cut off from official involvement in the case. It becomes clear that the whole process, along with the resulting frustrations and obsessions tied to the case, is taking a toll on Maniwa both physically and mentally. He's rapidly losing weight, and as he shifts between abstract and concrete thinking, his cognitive functions are deteriorating, as evident from his constant rumination on the case. This is sometimes visualized by him walking in an imagined place. This visualization is fitting because, just like the mystery switches between the ghost and human attackers, Maniwa is now existing between two realms while pursuing Lil Slugger, one where Kozuka is a wannabe ghost in the real world and the other, the domain of holy warriors. The uncertainty continues, and the journey ahead is uncertain for all. An elderly man named Fubabachi and a young man nicknamed Zebra arrange to meet, both carrying Maromi backpacks. Their online discussions indicate their intention for an internet suicide pact. They expect a third participant, Kamami-kun, who surprises them as a young girl. While they initially run playfully with her, they later distance themselves due to their concerns about her involvement. Fubabachi consumes his last pill, and Kamami-kun's attempts to contact them go unanswered. Seeking ways to end their lives, Fubabachi and Zebra enter an abandoned building to commit suicide via carbon monoxide poisoning. Their plans are disrupted when Kamami-kun joins them, scolding them for excluding her. The building's demolition forces them outside. Next, they consider jumping in front of a train, but this plan is thwarted by another person who jumps ahead of them. Disheartened, they abandon the idea. They brainstorm less painful methods for suicide while sitting on a bench. Kamami-kun expresses a desire to ride a train, inspiring Fubabachi's suggestion to travel to the mountains. The trio heads to the mountains and plans to hang themselves. Zebra secretly sabotages Kamami-kun's noose to protect her. As they prepare to hang themselves, Kamami-kun inadvertently breaks a branch, causing Fubabachi and Zebra to tumble down a slope and over a cliff. After finding Kamami-kun climbing down a cliff, the group decides to descend the mountain together. They reach a bathhouse and have dinner. Fubabachi suggests that Lil Slugger, a character previously mentioned, is actually someone named Fox seeking revenge. The group's attempts to sleep are interrupted by strange noises and the sudden appearance of Lil Slugger, who they chase unsuccessfully. The next day, the group reflects on their situation and their failure to catch Lil Slugger. Fubabachi realizes he's taking his last pill and notices that neither he nor his companions cast shadows. He proposes traveling on a bullet train as a new plan. While walking and singing, they attract the attention of some women taking a photo. The women's reaction is shocked. For homemakers share rumors they've heard about Lil Slugger. In the first story, there's a teenage boy who's struggling to study for his math test. During the exam, he sneezes out a math problem, rushes to the bathroom where he keeps sneezing out more, and ignores knocks on the door. When he finally looks up, he sees Lil Slugger peering down at him. A teacher walks in and finds a bunch of math equations everywhere. The second story is about a young wife stuck at home with a difficult mother-in-law. Her husband is away on her birthday, and her mother-in-law gives her a cooking kit as a sarcastic comment on her cooking skills. Angry, the wife attacks her mother-in-law but is interrupted by a knock on the door. They both think it's the husband returning, but it turns out to be Lil Slugger, who incapacitates the mother-in-law. In the third story, there's a doctor whose nurses mess up an in vitro fertilization procedure, resulting in a baby that's not genetically related to the parents. Months later, the expectant mother returns in pain, and an ultrasound shows that the fetus looks like a miniature Lil Slugger. The others tease Kamahara, the youngest member of the group, for sharing this story. As the stories continue, they become even more unbelievable. Kamahara goes back to her husband, who's a script editor/writer, and finds him injured on the floor. He claims that Lil Slugger attacked him and asks her to call a doctor. Instead of immediately calling for help, she becomes excited and wants more details about the attack. A zoom-out view shows that the apartment complex is shaped like the letters E, T, and C, which stands for etc. The team working on the show Mellow Maromi, which is based on a popular character created by Tsukiko, is having a hard time meeting their deadline. Saryuta Naoki, who's in charge of coordinating the production, often causes problems for everyone. He's currently struggling through traffic to deliver the show's first episode to the network. In the episode, Saryuta dozes off while driving and keeps seeing Lil Slugger chasing him when he wakes up, although Lil Slugger keeps disappearing. In his dreams, he remembers how the show was made and how the entire production crew was slowly killed off. Eventually, Lil Slugger shows up in his car, and Saryuta is found dead in front of the TV network's building. Even though the network takes the tape from his hand and rushes it to be broadcast, we hear Maromi repeatedly saying "just take a break" as the screen fades to black. Missy, Ikari's spouse, confronts Lil Slugger, who has noticeably grown larger since his last appearance. She talks to him about the true nature of humans, addressing the issues he has caused. She uses her own relationship with her husband, Ikari, to explain her points. She shares how they have faced challenges due to financial constraints, recounting a time when she had to decline a life-saving treatment because Ikari's job as a security guard didn't provide enough funds. Missy reminisces about the turning point in her life when she met Ikari, highlighting his unwavering support despite her inability to have children. She once worried that his dedication to work was a way to avoid her. This conversation triggers emotional shifts in Lil Slugger's size, expanding as he senses her distress, then diminishing as she dismisses her doubts as unwarranted. The magnitude of Lil Slugger increases again when Missy expresses the extent to which their lives have been shattered by his actions. Tension builds as he readies himself to strike her, crackling with energy. Initially afraid, Missy ultimately responds with laughter, defying his threat. Despite being hit, she remains composed and claimed that they are embarking on a fresh start. Humans, according to Missy, have an inherent power that eliminates the need for escape into make-believe worlds. She draws a connection between Lil Slugger and Maromi, asserting their intertwined nature. Lil Slugger's anguished scream precedes his sudden disappearance, along with everything else, except for Ikari's wife, set against a serene rural backdrop. Here, she resolves that she will undergo surgery. Ikari runs across Mikari, a former burglar who is now a guard, at the same time. Ikari shares his desire to be a traditional law enforcer, catching straightforward burglars instead of delving into the complexities of psychological criminality. Intriguingly, he finds himself abruptly transported to a fantastical realm, much like that. Maniwa subsequently arrives, searching for Ikari. In a state of distress, Missy despairs, voicing her concern that he won't come home. Maniwa gets into a fight with Lil Slugger, who turns out to be much stronger than he looks. While in this struggle, Maniwa also delves into Lil Slugger's history. He starts by visiting an elderly man in the hospital, just before the man passes away. The dying man's final words to Maniwa are, "Dance with the rabbit." Later, Missy shares with Maniwa the possibility that Maromi and Lil Slugger are one and the same person. During an interview, Tsukiko talks about how she came up with the concept for Maromi. Among her early sketches, there's one that features Lil Slugger. Maniwa has an encounter with a tiny bunny girl. This reminds him of what the old man said, and he follows the clue to a shop run by a dollmaker. This particular dollmaker crafts dolls resembling Lil Slugger's victims. These dolls speak to Maniwa and express their desire to defeat Lil Slugger as well. Through an augmented reality link, Maniwa explores Tsukiko's past, unearthing a case where she was attacked at the age of 12 by an individual on rollerblades carrying a golden bat. This leads Maniwa to Tsukiko's father, and he discovers a golden bat in the family's shed. With the truth revealed, Maniwa calls Tsukiko and shares her father's reassuring message. However, Maromi, the character, severs the phone cable. Maniwa shows up and confronts a giant Lil Slugger armed with the original bat. The fight ended without a clear winner, and Tsukiko along with Maromi vanished into a cartoon realm, leaving no trace of Maromi in the real world. The series concludes with Tokyo being severely damaged because of a dark mass that covers the city. This occurrence connects to a character's history. Maniwa gets in touch with the chief through a screen in a world resembling a cartoon. He shares his knowledge, and Ikari breaks the screen. This act of his makes him a hero, and he changes into a police uniform. Tsukiko becomes her younger self at the age of 12 and refers to Ikari as dad. Maromi, the character, transforms into an actual dog. Ikari reflects on how he always desired a daughter. Then, his wife makes an appearance, and he recollects his words to her during her difficult times that people shouldn't invent imaginary worlds to escape reality. He takes the original bat and shatters the cartoon world, revealing a damaged Tokyo and a sea of Maromi toys. Maniwa informs Ikari that the concept of Lil Slugger was created by Tsukiko to explain the death of her small dog, Maromi. Tsukiko claimed the dog was hit by a person on rollerblades. In truth, she had let the dog go because she was experiencing a painful cramp from her first period, and the dog got run over. She was scared of her father's reaction. The dark mass emerges, taking the form of a gigantic Maromi. Tsukiko and Ikari escape underground, but eventually, they are overcome by the mass. As Tsukiko sinks, she remembers the original incident and comforts her younger self, admitting her responsibility. 2 years later, Tokyo is finally restored. Ikari continues his role as a guard. Maniwa is working on the complicated equation on the street, much like the sage was doing. He finds the solution, reacts in astonishment, and gasps.